and we have since 2015 worked with how to get more women in tech and have focused on gender equality. It is very well documented that gender equality leads to a much bigger talent pool, a happy workforce, innovation, profitability, but still, where are all the women in tech? That's why we're here today, and that's why Trustware, together with Women in Tech in Denmark, have created Women in Tech Switzerland. And we really need all of your support for this important topic. The purpose of our community is to take some real action. We want to have less talk, more action. And in order for us to do that, we have created a think tank. The think tank will set goals and create hands-on solutions in order to get things going. We have created a Facebook group, a LinkedIn, and different communities in order for you to follow our activities and also know about our new events. And we will always post the key takeaways from our events on the social media, so you can also follow that. Then we will have a little introduction of Trustware by Frederick, the Hub Manager.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Welcome to Trustware. Some of you might know us. Trustware was originally started because the city of Zurich wanted to create a blockchain hub. Here in Zurich itself, there was an initiative in Zug already. There was a hub created, and a lot of companies who were developing blockchain technology were there. And then we decided to build a hub here. And this hub, the idea was to not focus on the hype, but on the technology. And we selected great companies. Many of them have become quite famous. And then we decided to build on that success and focus on the bigger technologies like cybersecurity, IoT, robotics, clean tech. So we have built communities around these technologies. And what we noticed was that there is really a big need for more diversity in these, especially in these high-tech fields, but also in the technology sector itself. And we had a few big events about women in blockchain. So we wanted to build on that, and it was a great, not accident, but it was just we met Joe last year, and we started developing for the last 6 months really a concept for a new community that is focusing more on action and really changing things in the industry. And yeah, I'm very happy about all these initiatives that we have launched. We started yesterday with a workshop where people were really coming up with great ideas. We have built a think tank with some of the leading tech companies. And yeah, I'm very, very excited about this panel. I think this is a great kickoff, and looking forward to hear your views on this topic. And let's all together change this industry and be the leaders also in diversity and in values. Yeah, thank you.
I will be the moderator today, and I really look forward to amazing conversations. And you will be able to ask questions during the talk. You can scan the QR code and then write your question. You can raise your hand, and we will provide you with a microphone. I don't know why this is. Or to everyone online, you can write a message in Zoom, and we will check it on an ongoing basis. In order to we know it's super late in the afternoon for you guys. So we will create a little kind of action. So we actually have a quiz during the panel, which is also a surprise for you guys. And there is actually a prize for the winner. So if you scan the code, you can also be in the quiz. On stage, we have this amazing panel of guests. We have Shane Krupp, Cloud Computing Specialist from Microsoft. We have Biljana Bajic-Bisum, Project Leader from Pasta Consulting Group. And we have Heike Riel, IBM Fellow, Head Science and Technology, Lead IBM Research Quantum, Europe and Africa. Thank you so much for coming. And before we start, we should get to know this amazing panel. And Shane, if you want to start.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So nice to see you. It's really wonderful to be here. So I'm Shane, and I'm originally from the Chicagoland area of the US of A. Been in Zurich now for 10 years. Long story, but my husband's German, and we landed on Switzerland. It's kind of a neutral territory for us both. And I've been working in this industry in tech since the very beginning. Actually, my first job was when I was about 17, selling software, so about 20 years now. And I'm thrilled to be here and share these ideas with you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Biljana Bajic-Bisum, project leader in BCG Zurich. So I focus there on defining the digital and product strategy for tech companies and financial institutions. And I'm a core member of our Technology Advantage practice. So how did I get into the tech? I started at a very early stage. I really loved math, and then kind of natural next step was to study computer science. And that's also what brought me to Switzerland. I did a PhD in computer science at EPFL, and then decided to stay and join BCG in our technology practice. Also before that, I worked as a software engineer and as team leader in Schneider Electric DMS and also SAP. And I'm really looking forward to have the discussion with all of you today on this very interesting topic.
Yeah, so my name is Heike Riel. I'm a researcher at IBM Research, but leading the science and technology team there in Rüschlikon, and also leading the quantum technology and hardware development, which we do in Europe and Africa in the research labs. And it's exciting to be a physicist, as I have to say. So when I kind of did a second path to study physics, and have been with IBM. Actually, I came originally from Germany, as you probably hear easily from my accent, and came here to IBM to do my PhD, and then got stuck at IBM because it's a nice place to do research, and it's really a fantastic place to drive innovation and develop and discover new things. And that's what I and my team are doing there. And I have been also in the US from time to time, also on assignment with IBM, and also at HP as a summer intern, and to discover new topics in research and to also learn new cultures. And yeah, thank you all for showing up, and I hope you have exciting questions that interact.
Good to be in a tech hub, right? Okay, so before we start the panel discussion, we'll start with the first question. So did you scan the QR code? Yeah. Could you maybe switch off your microphone so you're not speaking? Somebody is
Mine's muted.
I don't know.
Mine's, yeah.
Is it
Technology.
More distance.
Should I?
Is this next to one?
No. Is everyone ready? Yeah? You're here, yeah? Okay, I'll start it. Right? Can you hear me if I take off the mic?
Yes.
I'll try to take it off. Okay, let's take the first question. This is shocking news, but it's sadly true. So the first question we want to ask the panel is we have so many reports from the World Economic Forum, Harvard Business Review, even BCG, to name a few. They all write about diversity and gender equality. It seems to be a lot of attention going on, but where are we actually in the tech industry today? Yeah, yeah, just.
Okay, I prepared an answer. Well, I can tell you a little bit about Microsoft and then my own personal opinion, kind of both. So we published a report last year in 2019 called our Diversity and Inclusion Report. And really one of the only firms in the industry and really cross industry, Fortune 500, to do such a thing, be so transparent about where we're at in terms of inclusive culture and diversity. And we are now at 29.2% of our workforce is women. Wow. And when you start to look at the different roles, so as you look into retail and non-tech roles, it skews much higher, about 10%. And as you look into executives or technical roles, it skews a couple points lower, around 20%, around that area. So that's a little bit of the status of Microsoft on that front. It also reports on equal pay, however, very interesting. So representation, it's too low, but equal pay, they report being equal really across the board by, hundreds or thousands of a percent or of a cent. So pretty good on that front. And I was actually surprised to read it myself, although I have very much confidence that I'm paid equally personally, and I believe my colleagues are in the division that I'm in, but it was wonderful to see that written on paper. The other thing I think, the current state, my own personal opinion, is that we're not moving the needle on this, like that statistic really clearly demonstrates. And one reason is because I want to see a shift, and I think we all need to have a shift in mindset, really from individual groups who want help, like women, into how do we build this inclusive culture that kind of is all about everybody thriving and everybody finding their place in the industry. So to me, it's that current state of people are still thinking this is the right thing to do. That's the last point. And that's not compelling, unfortunately. We kind of wish it was, but just doing it because it's the right thing to do is not really speaking to people enough. But it's the really bringing the point home. Nobody really has fully embraced all of that research that you just mentioned is business imperative to succeed in the future, to be diverse in your teams, in your thinking, in your products. And so, that to me is the current state, is people have just not embraced that, or they haven't fully understood that.
Okay, just figure out some slide. So I want to provide a view maybe from BCG perspective as well what I have seen in the clients and the industry in the past years. So I would say we are definitely not where we are supposed to be, but we are heading at least in the right direction. So I think if I look at the clients that we worked with in the past years, I have to say we've seen very, very few women really, like especially in the tech leadership positions. And in the past years, I think there is a lot of initiatives also in the different companies to really change that. And but very often, even if they have these efforts, there is like one, the first one and probably the only one that is there. So it's also very difficult for them to build their paths and to really be themselves. very often it's really like kind of adjusting to that system that is there for all these so many years, and where actually the true value that they could bring is partially lost as well. However, also I said, I think good news from my perspective, there are many things people are getting aware of that. There are initiatives happening in the different companies, and also from BCG perspective, we have basically, I think, around 40% of women globally. Then also we have now the technology sector, which is really growing rapidly. We are aiming there really like to have, we have a lot of efforts to make sure that also in these positions, so now we have also many different areas, like even from IT architects, data scientists, people with technical background, and so on. And we put really a lot of stress both from senior leadership and also from us, how do we increase basically intake of women, and also as well as keeping them as a more senior position, because only in that combination we can really change something. So in that sense, I think if I look back at the past few years spent there, I think the effort is huge. It's still a way to go, but I think it's also good to see that there is really a huge progress being made.
Yes, I fully agree with what you said also. And I think awareness has changed quite a bit, right? Awareness in society. If I go back when I started, to be at a company, and when I saw that the awareness about how to hire people, how to write ads, how to attract females, I mean, all this. I think the question of diversity and also gender diversity is around already for many years. If I look particularly also at IBM, the first females I think were hired in 1890 or something. So that's a long way back, right? And actually, our founder, he already in 1915, he promised to have equal opportunity for diversity, for gender, and also for also state equal pay and all these things. So the first vice president, I think we had in 43. So I think there is a lot of intention to have diversity, and then it's a question of also how you can put it into practice. And I personally see often also when I write an ad, right? And then it starts already what is the pipeline of females in technology. And if I look back when I studied physics, we had about 8% females in my year, and 5% were going for teaching, and only 3% for being a physicist in industry. And so you see that even if I want to hire female physicists, right, or female colleagues, it's very difficult to create the pipeline. And I think in that regard, there is still a lot to do, because my kind of hypothesis is that a lot is in the social role modeling of what we create as a society into already starting at our children's. And I think only if you're very stubborn and heavy-minded, then you make it into technology. Because you kind of have to go against the majority. And that's a bit what I think has to change, because as more females will come, the less is the minority, and the more easy it is to join that crowd.
Exactly. Do you have any comments to what has been said?
Well, I think here is on the pipeline. We hear that a lot. Like, yes, would love to hire female, but then there's no pipeline. We hear it especially. So, two questions. One is, you say the mindset has changed, but I'm wondering, I guess, also in male-dominated teams, to what extent has the mindset changed? Do you see that, or is it mostly like a leadership issue? What mindset has changed? Because it's cool and sexy, and you have to do that. And the second question is, how do you respond to lame excuses with the pipeline? So it seems to be you see more women starting to study tech, kind of tech widely, but then they don't move on, and and then there's like the publications and so on. So I have the impression that a lot of it is lame excuses, and you can do, especially with companies, I could come up with like at least 5 methods how you can approach the pipeline issues. So
I think it's a very good discussion, and to have this understanding what is needed, right? And there has been a lot of things already done also to have the right infrastructure, flexibility in work, because we always heard, okay, a manager has to work 100%, and so a female, if she's not working 100%, cannot take this managerial or project leader role and whatever. And I think that's really, as I said, right, that is not true. Yeah. And this is also kind of the bias which sometimes comes. And I think important is really to look at biases which are in our environment. And I think we always try to implement other things which are important to females, and how can we attract, how can we also find, just have the people who may be interested in the job read the ad. And what we also observed is that if we have already females in teams, then this attracts actually more females. And so it's changing. I think in some of the more male-dominated early versions of teams, it probably has been, it's a pipeline issue. But I think we are also at a stage, to a certain point, where we would like to hire more, but it's just every company is fighting also for the minorities around is getting more.
Thank you all of you for your presentations. But I would like to what I wanted to add on to that is that I've noticed that generally females, when we read, let's say, a job ad and it says entry level, and then it says you need to have 3 to 4 years of experience, we don't apply for that job. Versus men do, because they, oh yeah, even if I don't have it, I'm going to keep on trying. So I think something important is that also perhaps for these job ads to be a bit more realistic. And someone who just graduated, I'm not going to do an internship for 1 year for half the pay that I deserve. Thank you.
Do you have more questions, comments? Yeah.
Thank you. One thing that comes to my mind, it seems like we're quite an international bunch here. Different backgrounds, stories. Being in Switzerland, for me, I'm kind of new here. I'm discovering things as I go, and it's ongoing, to be honest. Over the last few years, I've been in San Francisco and Madrid, and people are talking very different. So I was wondering, when we were talking about
Is to keep you all awake.
it works. When it comes to international versus local context, the local bias that you brought up, local education mentality, is this part of the discussion today, the research you brought up, or is it more of international kind of, so just to understand where the context is, because it really depends on it, right? So that's kind of my question, is it local or it's more international?
So I can answer quickly from Microsoft, and it's the way we're approaching the problem, or they are approaching the problem at the corporate office, not me, but is very much, like I said before, you're diverse teams. So it's not just about gender, it's about race and orientations of all types. And in every market, that's going to be different. So every market has a different kind of target that they should be working on. So Switzerland for us is a market where women are underrepresented. So that is the focus of the Microsoft Switzerland team, is to bring in more women. Whereas other regions of the world, absolutely, we're looking at diversity across multiple metrics. So I 100% agree that it has to be a local effort. And that's, again, back to this idea of inclusion. It's understanding where people are coming from, understanding the Swiss culture, understanding the expectations they grow up with as children, understand the systems in place to support all different types of people. That all goes into it. You know, certain cultures, I'm American, you know, we are a little bit louder than some, we're a little more aggressive than some. And so we might apply for that job ad more readily than perhaps someone from another culture. And so, yeah, all of that definitely should go into it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's the same for BCG. We usually look at the global level, but basically the efforts are also there on the local level. So, and I can imagine what you mean by coming to Switzerland, because coming from Serbia also, I was on one side, Switzerland is a very, very advanced place. You get shocked at some things, especially when it comes to gender equality, and especially being a woman in tech. But I have to say that, for example, in BCT, then we have specific local efforts. How do we also attract more female in tech in Zurich as well? And I have to say, in Zurich, we're actually quite good. It usually starts with like having a few of them, and then start bringing more. So I think, as I can mention, I think that really helps, because also when there are new people come, then they also have some role models or someone to be next to them, which also helps a lot.
Yeah, but also from our point of view, I mean, it's really international inclusion, right? It's just about everyone can bring something to the workplace, and everyone has a different background, and we should be very open and unbiased towards the people in general. And then, of course, you have also the local characteristics. And but what I observe, actually, most of the, I mean, we have locations, and just for the research labs I'm now talking about, because in the business where you have also different roles, I can shout without, then this may be different. But even if I look at the US, or even if I look at Africa, Africa is actually a bit, we have more females in percentage than if I look, for example, in the US or other places. So I think across in the research in physics, engineering, computer science, it's actually across the different labs not so much different. Perhaps is a bit more on the lower side even, but I think that's very similar. And I think the issues or the let's say the infrastructure, what I say is also the area around. I muted it, but it's still making some noise.
I think it's the speakers, not the microphone.
Okay. So I see different local differences because, for example, if you look at the US, the children taking care of children is probably more advanced. The same in France, that's easier. Whereas in Germany and Switzerland, that may be more a problem. So it differs a bit where companies have to help also in the infrastructure and in these support structures.
Like you mentioned to me examples from Denmark, Microsoft in Denmark, where people are leaving around 4 o'clock to pick up their children, which is customary in Denmark when you have small children to leave. And then, you know, after you have spent some time with your children, you start working again, and that's okay actually in Denmark to do that.
And it affects both genders equally, so all parents. And then you look at it as that problem. And I remember the first time one of my colleagues on the phone says to me, a Danish colleague, because we have very international teams, and he's living in Copenhagen, he says, I can't take this meeting, I'm gonna go pick up my kids. And I was like, you're gonna admit that in front of everyone? You know, because I've been one of these people that as a mother, I've really felt the need to hide that, just to take it off the table, and just focus on me and my work, and don't look at that, and don't think about that. And I realize now I'm kind of growing and learning that that's a mistake, and that keeps the status quo going, and that they call it covering. It's like the official word, I guess, I've learned. And so I'm going to try not to do that and have bravery, but I really learned something that day from this guy in Denmark. And I thought, and the kids are just going to school till 4, also different than what we have in Switzerland, where they're out sometimes as early as noon. So it just, yeah, everybody's got different challenges, but it's important we all, yeah.
But I think that's also a difference which has changed a lot, I think, right? Because, I mean, I think probably 10, 15 years ago, females have tended more to cover this because they felt they need to cover this if they are as a minority in technology. I think right now it becomes more normal to also admit this because, you know, male also take meanwhile care of kids and don't cover it, right? And I think this becomes now more normal for everyone. That's also, I mean, also how we, I mean, you mentioned it before, right? What do we do for including people, right? And of course, when to schedule meetings is one thing, right? And this is a very difficult problem because we have sometimes meetings where we have people from Japan, from US, East Coast, West Coast, and Zurich, and that can be a problem. Good luck. So yeah, so I think the flexibility of the work we have to have, right? To kind of accommodate for many things, and that helps.
Was there a question? No, I just have a comment. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think these 2 comments are really interesting because
what you said before, so there's things that we do as a society or as companies, how we can make place for women, also at higher ranks. But then on the other side, it's what you also highlighted is that each people need to have this yes we can attitude because we don't there. And I feel like our male counterparts, they're more there, they're bold, and I think that's really important as well. So we have these things that can be created for us, but then there's also work to do on a personal on our side, which I think is really nice to have this comparison.
But I fully agree with you. Please, it's about also, I mean, sometimes you have to show courage and demonstrate it. But on the other hand, we also have to educate the ones who kind of observe or who react on this, that they should not have a bias towards how we may behave, right? And I think there's also a big difference, which I've learned also having PhD students and master students, and also from my own experience. At the beginning, I mean, the self-confidence is the level of self-confidence I've realized of master students who come is very different. And so sometimes we also have to provide the confidence into the people and say certain things, right? And sometimes also dare to say, hey, I have experience. I mean, no one fulfills an ad 100%. Show me one who fulfills it 100% what people ask for. There's probably no one, right? And sometimes the reviewers, we call it in our, when we interview people, so we always call it, oh, we lift the bar as high that we easily can walk through. So, right, I mean, it's lifting the bar high, and sometimes you have to say, hey, I can make it. But it's this interplay between realistic, daring, and on the other hand, also being a good observer and being unbiased in when you have to decide. And we all have biases, so everyone. Right? We have to be aware of that. They may be about different things, but we all have biases.
And I think it helps when there are also like senior, in some positions, for example, I know at EPFL, when we were choosing PhD candidates, they were usually, let's say, men professors, and basically we had one female which was super strong, and she's still there, so amazing. She was always saying, like, I know when I look at the CV, so the guys usually say, no, let's not invite them. She says, I know that women, they always decrease at least 20% what they did, and the guys they increase. So therefore, I want to invite them for interview, they don't perform. And usually she was right. So I think it really helps to have someone also there. But at the end, I agree, it's also on us to, you know, at the end, step up and think and basically to be encouraged on one side by other, probably senior and like leaders, but also like to be able to do certain things.
We have a question from Zoom.
Yeah, we have a question from our stream. What are your feelings on inclusion? Do leadership teams really understand that diversity involves embracing the discomfort of the unknown? I sometimes have the impression that everyone wants diversity, but few are really prepared to go along with discomfort and instead put it on the price diverse others to change, meaning make discomfort go away, rather than to also think about how they might have to change themselves.
Nailed it. But I think that's a very, very good comment here, because I think someone was mentioned there is a big difference if people just can say, okay, now let's have this one because someone told them it's cool to do it, and then you can just start it, versus really understanding, okay, now they come, they're actually very different than what they used to see, but actually that's really good, and there is a value in the different perspective that they bring to the table. So I think that's something that's really important, kind of not to do it for the sake of doing it, but to really truly understand why we need actually.
And I think that a little goes back to they have not absorbed the potential risk that they take on with these very one-note teams, if you will. So they're just not, they don't want to be uncomfortable. None of us do. Like you said, we all have biases, and one of those unconscious biases is called similarity bias. You see someone, they like you, they're similar background, you're like, this person's great. Just natural, human nature. So you just become aware of it, and then you start to observe yourself a little bit. And I think we all need to do that work. Women need to do that work. Then we'll have a little more understanding for how hard it is for men to do it, for other people to do it, for leaders to do it. So we should all be thinking about that. That's one of my kind of calls to action I was going to talk about later. But on this particular question, I think you really do have to push from the top. So we have mandates at Microsoft now that managers have to prove all of the things that they're doing to push themselves out of that comfort zone and into a place of diversity. So one of my favorite stories is this crash test dummy story. Does everybody know this one? Okay. Some people do, so some people don't, but the idea is essentially that automobiles have been tested with male crash test dummies for decades. Male body weight, male average height, male bone structure, male, neck structure, things that are really, really important safety tests. So many decades have gone by, and then it's women are now 47% more likely to get injured in a car crash, seriously injured. This is all true. You can find it. There's a great article in The Guardian in 2019. So they didn't do that on purpose. No way. They just didn't think of it.
They're all male engineers.
They were male engineers, and they were just, that is the risk of a non-diverse team. That's as simple as that, is that you're going to have a blind spot, and you're going to forget something, or maybe you're going to develop a product. We're always thinking about that. If you develop a product that only is good for a certain type of people, you've just reduced your market share down. Just thinking about those profits. So most of those people have not really absorbed that messaging. So if they're not willing to, they make excuses about the pipeline, they're not willing to be uncomfortable. And they're not willing to kind of really observe their teams and do that like hard work, because it is hard work. And that's what we also say is like, where I say it's messy and I've made mistakes, and we all have. And that's why it's kind of a humbling experience to go through it, and we should all go through it. And don't just wait for someone else to kind of pave the way for anyone. So I really love that question. Thanks for submitting.
Yeah, and IBM, we have this, one of our practices is to value wild ducks. And these are, it started actually about 57 years ago when our founder created the IBM Fellow. And the IBM Fellow is the highest technical position at IBM, where it's kind of a lifelong position where you dare to really tell the truth to your management. Right, so you are kind of deep technical person, and your mission is really to tell the truth, right, about things which are going wrong. And you also have to appreciate what it does. And what does it mean? Because, I mean, we all know if you lead a team, that can be a burden, right? Because it costs a lot of energy, but it also creates a lot of value. And this is what we all, in our own position, we need to value the people who want to discuss, right? Who bring up new ideas, who are sometimes contradictory, who bring up other arguments, and it may be more hard work in the discussions and developing things, but the better things come out. And we practice this also when we at home do things, right? Because my husband and I, we all have different ideas how things are to be made. And if we create furniture or whatever, and then we discuss it, we fight about it, and again we say, your idea and my idea together is a better one. So I think that's what inclusion, I think, is all about. Yeah.
We will have one last question because we have more questions to go through. Actually, can you be the last one? Sorry.
So my question goes to the hiring process, because as you already mentioned, already during the studies, there's less women, and as a result, in fact, a lot of women, switch their career path later on, and they bring some other experiences from other fields. And so I want to ask how companies handle that, if they're welcoming or open, and if the hiring or onboarding process is different.
So I'm not sure I fully understand what you mean.
So if you hire people and there are women who didn't, for example, study computer science, but switch to tech career later on from some other field, if your companies are open to that, and if there is a difference in hiring or onboarding the person in the team, or is it the same? What are the experiences from your companies?
So I mean, we do a lot of also internally, right? You will never end up with a job you have started with at the end. So you have also be flexible because technology changes. In particular, in computer science and engineering, there are things which are changing and you have to adapt. And we also have like even like we provide education and training. Like now, for example, artificial intelligence is a hot topic, and there are not enough people on it. For quantum computing, it's a hot topic. There are not enough people trained on it. So we need to allow people first to bring people on board who wants to take this on and who want to learn about it. And then there are different education things we do. We have people who also do a degree at a university with us. So for example, I had a colleague who started actually as an engineer in technology, and then he did a course on computer science because he wanted to go more towards AI. So this is also what we support for people to do on the job, that they also take our courses. So, but it depends really on the individual case, what is best, but we're very flexible.
I think for BCG, yeah, the answer is definitely yes. So I think sometimes we have people, because I think especially nowadays when technology is kind of being everywhere. So there are people who maybe studied something else, but maybe, I don't know, they worked in a tech, maybe some of them have tech startups, some of them have experiences in different companies, and they just decided to switch. And basically, very often then they can join then also the team if there is like the business and fit, as well as internally. So we have people who maybe start as not being part of our technology team, but they start working on the project, they're really knowledge, they develop knowledge, and basically that's where we also offer them basically. We always make sure there is someone in the team with them at the beginning to help them and so on to grow also in that role. But it's something that is possible. And I would say even sometimes brings a different angle again to tech. So for example, for me, I studied computer science, so there is one way how I look at things. I'm always kind of in these details and so on. So if someone comes with a different background, but still has strong interest in the understanding, that can be very helpful actually together.
We would also welcome these people, I think, but to be honest, it doesn't happen nearly as much as it should. So I wouldn't say there's a massive program around that. We have, for example, veteran programs, re-entry in the workforce, women re-entry in the workforce, but kind of moving career changes mid-career, nothing formal, but I just got to go out and try it, I would say, and then really understand how your experience is applicable to the industry or the job, get that story straight. And
I can maybe just add one more comment. So what's also interesting that typically, like I see very often, even if I see like a woman in a team and I say, okay, would you like to join our tech group because you're really good? She's like, yeah, but I'm not that good in that. And that's also one of the reasons, like for men, I never heard that. So in that sense, it's also important that I think it helps like when we have a strong female share, like to have someone to encourage them. And even if not, so like they can be guys in the team that also have the same awareness to make sure that maybe they get some encouragement.
Thank you. The next question is, should we have some goals in the tech industry in relation to how many women? And when can we be satisfied? And also, can we learn from other countries like the Scandinavian countries? And can you give some examples within your company?
Sure. So our goals, my goals is again going back to this idea of let's move the dialogue beyond, let's think about women into this total inclusive culture where everybody has a great place to work, where they can be themselves, whether you're a parent or you are a person living with disabilities or whatever it is. So that's a big goal, to this inclusive culture. And how do you get there? It's training, creating awareness, and every single individual finding their own place of humility and understanding of the experiences of others and all that. So on the really more specific side of it, then the training will also help out with these things as topic of quotas. So there's quotas existing that they're really, very controversial subject. Should they be there? Should they not be there? And I think it's what the problem is that there's so many biases in the hiring process that people use quotas to kind of bypass that. and then you're not doing the real work. So if you're doing the real work, you realize, oh, it's my subconscious bias that's preventing me from broadening my opinion of who could do this job well. That's really tends to be the problem, is that they're not fully understanding what kind of capabilities could actually do this job. They only know this one narrow definition. And so they say, well, I've been told to hire a woman, so I'll do that. But they don't always know, am I hiring, they feel they're hiring someone underqualified. They actually feel that, a lot of managers, and they say it, she's underqualified, but I'll hire her because I have to. And then you get into all kinds of problems. And the fact is, probably 2 out of 3, she was qualified. And maybe 1 out of 3, these are made up statistics, totally pulled out of the air, but sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Much better situations when we can actually train these folks to understand their biases and think a little farther out of the box. So that's my goal. It's just to raise awareness that everybody understands, your own biases are probably the things standing in the way of all this more than anything. And we're doing that at Microsoft. So you asked, what are we doing? That's insane amount of training.
Yeah, so I would say for me, the personal goal would be really not have this difference in the future, you men or women technology. It should really be irrelevant. But what it means is basically that as a woman, you can succeed by just really being yourself. And because I think you're still at the stage where it's kind of one system there where you kind of need to fit into that box. So, and I agree with Shannon, we also in BCG, we do a lot of trainings. I would say a lot of kind of initiatives and trainings also for unconscious bias, also when we do the interviews and basically to do that. And we also have different people who are really looking at different tools as well. Also, like the Python problem, do we now look just the PTH because it really limits our kind of we can find there, like what are other initiatives and ideas that we could have there, and as well as how do we keep then women at senior positions, because what I have also seen very often also in industry is that then maybe you start bringing them at the junior levels, but they don't have anyone to look up or someone to even understand the tendencies in that sense. So I think both dimensions are really important.
So you asked whether we can learn. I think we always can learn. It's always to be, because different countries have different environments, right? You mentioned the Northern countries where I think the distribution of the duties is a bit different than Germany or Switzerland. I think also the infrastructure may be different. I think that's something where we can learn definitely to provide an environment where it's easy for everyone kind of to do the job that we do. One important thing for myself and for all the people I lead or the environment and we want to create is that we teach the people always about the unconscious bias. I think that's something you make a course, 1 year later you have forgotten. Right? I think that's something where you need to really kind of get this intrinsically, that you create a culture where we do not put people too much into boxes based on certain behaviors, but we really see the person and what they're capable of doing and how we include the skills in the things we need to do. So I think that's probably, what you also said, having certain numbers is good to watch out and to be aware of. What I really would like to create is come to a point, what I mentioned before is where it's no longer a minority, the women in technology, because I think my personal experience was that I needed to be very stubborn to say, no, I want to go in tech, I want to study math, I want to take these courses. And all my colleagues, my female colleagues at the age of 7 or so, right, they were all going into other places and do different things. So I needed to be very passionate about the technology and the math in order to miss some other things, right? And I think that's something where I want, because if this changes, then I think it becomes natural. And I think our society needs to, in that regard, also change a bit, because I see in many different places still, oh, girls, they don't need to know math, right? They don't need to know it because whatever. So it's kind of chic to not know math for girls today. And I think that's something which I really don't like to hear all the time, because it should be actually good to know Mars, right? Because it helps in in everything. Even if you have to bake a cake with a different format and you have to calculate how much sugar you need for it. So I think, and a lot of things also movies, right? In movies, I never see a female engineer. Very rarely. Give me one example.
There's a few now, yeah.
Yeah. And there are some newcomers, right, where the girls are super smart in math, and I like these movies, but they're very little if you compare them to the mass of crazy male engineers. And I heard once in a panel where there were girls who just finished high school, and there was also a discussion about which direction to go, technology or not. And she said, look, I don't want to appear like Gracie Einstein. So it's boys like this, right? This kind of image, but girls may not like this image, but this is how they connect these images together. And it's a lot about the image, which is created also by the society. And I think that's something which we all need to make sure that that changes.
Yeah, that's really real. So we've talked a lot about the workplace, but less about, children and how people are growing up. And that's something I'm really conscious of. And it's like a battle every single day to make sure that my son is not seeing too many images of weak women. And the same with my daughter, not seeing too many, buff guys or whatever, and vice versa, obviously. It's like unbelievable how hard it is to fight against that stuff. So you have to be like proactive. And I try to address it with them. And then I have to say there's a lot more media opportunity now than there was 10 years ago, for sure. When I think about growing up, things I watched, it was only male characters. It was all male characters almost, really. And the DuckTales or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, maybe that was just me that I was interested, but it was just, so now I see it's improving slowly, but these messages are so powerful, and it's like we should all be just diligent and vote with your time and your money about the things that you agree with, and just be aware. And I also say, just on this point of young girls, I'd love to hear how you guys were supported, because I, for one, had a computer very young. My mom always said girls can do anything. I had a teacher put me in these STEM programs when I was a teenager, going to little camps, doing math with other girls, math contests. I really had a lot of people supporting me and always saying, you can do it. I even did computer programming in high school, and without all that, I would have definitely not felt confident enough to just go in there and put my hat in the ring. I mean, sitting through those computer science classes was really hard. I remember feeling totally like an outsider. People would be like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I like it, So it took a lot, like you said, exactly, Heike, the stubbornness, but I had a lot of help. And I think all girls need a lot of help, maybe. We all can be a part of that, process. So I don't know what Switzerland's doing, but I'd be really interested to get involved, and maybe that's part of the think tank. But to keep all those programs, I think, really are worth the time.
Yeah. So if you also think about my job, I think first of all, even in family, my mom is a mechanical engineer as well. So I think that was always something for me. It was just normal to be in that field. And I would say Serbia, maybe it's not the best example for position in society, but I think in terms of just being in STEM, it was just normal for me. Because like we've always had such a strong culture of this math competition, physics competitions, and we were like competing against guys being equal or better. That was just normal. So I remember the first time I actually realized that it's kind of weird that I'm coding was when I went abroad for an internship. And they were like, you studied computer science? Yes. So like, why is that? Yeah. So I think it helps to have an environment where it just feels equally natural for you to do this.
Let's have our next question in the quiz.
I know that one.
No, just keep it. No.
There's an arrow on
Other people can join. So,
It's just to emphasize.
Okay, question 2. Well done. And we'll have the next, the final one, right? We will combine it with another question, which is, it is super important also to involve the men in this discussion. And we see a lot of men today, which is super nice. So the next question will be for the panel: how can we involve the men into this topic?
So I think, so I think technically without involving men, we cannot go to digital. So I think there are a few things for me. One is maybe already at the company level. It's important that they are really involved in this journey of transformation that you are taking, because very often they are at the leadership position. And for example, also within BCG, I feel a lot of senior men who really supported me and mentoring me, and that's really something that means a lot, like also for personal development and also for the progress itself. And then I think as a society, and I think that definitely varies depending on the different countries, it's also something that where men can really play a very, very important role. I think for me, Sweden is really a great example for that. I spent almost a year there. I think in general, the whole gender equality topic there is on a completely different level. I think probably the same journey in Denmark, in the Nordics, it's the same area. But there, it's really, first of all, for me, two takeaways there are, it's kind of this genuine respect for diversity in all possible sense, and including also the gender equality, but also in terms of men playing the role that, in a sense, no matter how senior they are, at the end, it's kind of they're always the time also the other part is equally important. So they don't, I also when I heard some of these comments like, oh, I have to leave, or I need to call my wife because it's now her, it's tonight is my night. And even if it's a super senior person, where typically in some other countries would be so important in the world, the parts of course they have to stay here. So I think it's really something that both at the company and society level can be really.
Yes, and I think it starts private because it starts with the support of the partner, which needs to be on equal terms. I think to be most efficient and also have the passion and the energy, and that really needs to help each other on those things in equal terms. And then of course also at the job, I think it's about really creating all the time this awareness. And also showing the value of diverse team and showing the value of inclusion. And I think the example you mentioned before on the questions coming that you find in all the different places, right? Having diverse teams. I think it's getting the ideas, thoughts of different backgrounds. And what the colleagues also realized when they had male dominant or teams only of males, right? They were really also seeing a different kind of image of the team. And also how the whole dynamics of the team changed and how everyone behaved. And I think that also this seeing this value will then also help.
So we have the last question, and is how can we convince we are asking you now for them to actively support gender equality?
Well, I think. Oh, is that a question?
Yeah, we can. If you have more comments for how to involve men, I know that you said that you have 40% women compared to men, and how did you sort of involve the men in that?
I think the way we're involved in the way I like to involve them, and certainly it's the business results, is that making them aware of the risk that they run not having diverse teams. So that's compelling for anybody usually, but also the way we're essentially asking them to be allies to women. And what we say now is that we need to ask them how they want to be involved, and really, create a safe space so they can make mistakes, create a safe space so that they can reach out. And when you get to a point where you have an inclusive culture, there is no us and them. There is no, oh, you're here and I'm here, and there's too little of me, too much of you. It's more, we're just all different backgrounds, different experiences. So then you start to learn how many men are actually covering, how many men don't feel their authentic self is accepted, and how exactly when a woman comes in the team, they're able to be more themselves. And so it's really one-on-one, kind of this slow change. You just talk to men about, that's what I personally do, and say, you know what, you can say anything. There's nothing wrong, because everybody's at a point in this journey of understanding where they fit in and how much they need to learn, and then how they feel about it. And so I like to ask them, how comfortable are you with what you hear about women being promoted? How do you feel you're being left behind? Are you interested in helping? Do you have any opinions? You just kind of get the dialogue going a little bit, more on one-on-one. And then it's up to them to decide to maybe change some of their behaviors. And at the end, that's what I think will make a difference. But really asking the men. So I like to also put myself, as a woman, I'm in a minority in tech. My race puts me in the majority in tech. So I can think back and think about other races and how I would want to be approached to be an ally for those groups. How I'm very scared of saying the wrong thing, and what if I, am I doing enough? Am I not doing enough? I don't know what to do. And then we can all kind of have that place, again, coming back to this whole do your own work, and it will help you actually with other people. So that's helped me at least. And then when I speak to men, I know that they feel safe enough to kind of get it out there, and then you can maybe make some progress. And I think that's where some of these women's efforts, so you talked about if we go at this pace, it'll take 200 years. Still not that much time when you think about how long this whole system's been in place. So I'd be like, cool, that's like my grandchildren's grandchildren. That's fine. It's not quite good enough, but I think it's because it's been a little bit in isolation. And I think also racial diversity and all that, they're operating much in isolation. And it's, we all come together, more can happen. That's why I approach it. So, but I'd be interested, I don't know if you're gonna ask them then, or
now I'm
yeah.
or
There's some back.
Is the question coming now?
No.
Okay, so let's ask our audience, how can we involve the men in this discussion?
I don't actually have an answer, but I have another question when it comes to involving men and sort of culture. We speak about kind of the culture needs to change, but going to the nitty gritty, how do you do this? So you take the example of our male team, and then the first female joins, and then you can imagine the situation where the all male team makes certain jokes, and suddenly they don't know whether to make the jokes. And I have the sense that a lot of it is expected to be just changing, or to be on the woman to change it. And I wonder how you address that as companies or as leaders and teams to change that culture, because I kind of can't see the situation where you're going to sit with your male team and be like, look, there's a woman joining, this is the do's and don'ts, because that is artificial, but maybe that's the way to go. So I see really on that kind of culture issue, which is such an intangible issue, how to, what the measures are, what you do.
So I think this probably depends also on, on what the culture is in the environment, right? I think I did an apprenticeship as a furniture maker. The jokes were definitely different than in the environment that we're in, right? So I think there are, and in that regard, I also have like I also have a joke bag, right? It's always good to have kind of a joke bag and don't take things too serious. because, and there are, typically people don't want to hurt you with a joke they make, right? If you have a feeling that they do, then this is a problem. And there are also, I mean, we have this within our company, like the IBM business contact guidelines. I think probably Microsoft has similar things, and which clearly say how you want to approach people, how you want to work with people. And this is not about a female and a male. It's about other cultures who have other things where you may make jokes about which are not appropriate in the professional environment. And I think the manager also of the team, or not the manager, actually did the wrong thing. Everyone has to take a stand if these things are inappropriate. And if it's you as a colleague, also about other jokes which you feel inappropriate, or if it's so in that regard, the hierarchy doesn't matter at all, and this is also encouraged by the company culture. And I think it's jokes is always a fine line, right? You have to get a feeling: is this a joke I accept, or is this a joke I accept in this environment? And then I go afterwards to the person and tell you, look, this was super inappropriate, and I don't want you to do this again. So that's, this is really how you deal with it. It depends very much on the situation, and also discussing things. If you don't feel whether you have understood it, I also approach people. Hey, I understood it this way. Did you really mean it this way? I mean, often it's also about perception. And because I'm working in an environment with more than 45 different cultures. A lot is also perception, and that is I would say it's not only a male thing, it's really a cultural diversity thing.
I would add that the burden is often on the woman or the different person. And at Microsoft, they're trying to say the burden is now on the manager. You should talk to your manager about that. It's your manager's job, if you're not comfortable, to go to that person and to say, hey, we clearly told you what's expected. This makes this person uncomfortable. No big deal. Just don't do it again. And people at Microsoft now expect that to happen, I would say.
I think that's right, but I think it's not only this, right? This is of course clear that if you feel uncomfortable and someone made a joke, you should go to their manager. But it's not only what I'm saying is it's not only on the manager to do this, it's on everyone in the team to stand up if things are not going well. And that has to be encouraged.
Sorry, I have a short up on that. So my experience, I worked with a bigger team of Spanish engineers, and the culture there is quite male dominated, especially when it comes to tech. And having been in a team where I'm the only female product manager and there's 10 developers, from my experience, it felt like I'm interrupting the fun. Basically, I'm the one who brings the trouble, you're the buzzkill, basically. And I think that it's an interesting balance between the male brotherhood of we've got each other. There's the one who's bossing everybody around. And I'm wondering what's your take on that balance there, because I think that men support each other in their own way. And having that first female to break that ice is not always easy. Are there any, apart from manager, apart from going and talking about that with someone, it's that you're breaking a party, basically. They think they own it, and they probably do and have for a while. But how to go about it in a way that considering our own bias, right, that we want to be confident and bold, but how to go about it without, stepping on everybody else's toes in the room. So, yeah.
How long did you work with them?
Sorry?
For how long did you work with them?
I worked with them for a couple of years, so it was a lot of up and down. But I had to give up a lot of who I wanted to be to fit in. So it's basically one or the other. So it's kind of, as you mentioned before, it's male dominated. So some of that dominance needs to come down. But how to go about it if you're the only one carrying the torch?
That's super hard. I've definitely been there. It was hard. And I found myself really adapting to them to fit in. And then it's like this cycle where then you try to slowly change minds and hearts, but it's a process. So I feel like it's hard. It's very hard because you don't want to be the one also going to the manager. That's only sometimes the case that you want to do that. I remember I was in a team and this guy would always say, "Hey guys," and Shane. "All right, everybody," and Shane. Or, just always singling me out. This, he thinks he's trying to be nice, or guys, or give me attention, or be like, "You're a woman, hey." But I just hated it. I was just, and I finally spoke to him, and I was just like, his style, like, "Hey man, just please don't do that anymore. Just, I want to be everybody's, okay? Just do that." And so it just, I just think that's the only thing I've found working, is that I had to just kind of take my time and slowly become myself over time, and merge in. But it's probably not the best way. Maybe someone else has a better idea. That was what I found to work.
Yeah, wants to say bring another woman.
Bring another woman in.
That is all I do.
That took the scales a lot. Just one more.
But no, I think it's really, that's why I asked also how long did you work with them, because I want to say probably it takes time. I can imagine at the beginning it's really hard, but then it takes time to build this, let's say, blending with this romance in between them. So, but I guess once you become kind of one part of the gang, then yeah, you will never get out of that. I always say, like, women working in tech, they can never be the same one, spending so much time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's no recipe, right, for it. I think it's obvious if you are kind of the only exotic person on the team, then it's what we described as a typical approach this way, right? And but I think it's really creating more balanced teams from the beginning, not kind of remain in this unbalanced situation for a long time, because it will be always difficult for the one who creates the unbalance.
I mean, to a certain extent, you can also use it to your advantage, because I think you bring something totally different. Because what I also feel is, like, even if you go sometimes to the meetings, there are 10 guys and you, and maybe they don't know who has which background. Typically, they will always look at the guy to ask for the tech question, because that's just a very natural instinct that everyone has. If you wear high heels, there is no chance they're ever going to give you no tech. So I think in that sense, but then once you show them you do, then it becomes really powerful and fun, actually, because then you really bring something different on top of that. So sometimes that can also be an advantage.
And I think there's so many situations, of course, that we probably all have experienced, or will experience, right? Oh, you must be the secretary. No, I'm not. So our just also email to get, right? You always, in technology, you always get an email which starts with Mr., right? If they have some campaign or so, it's always with Mr. But, so there are all these little things which probably change in the future.
So yeah, I'd like to say maybe the best thing is to support each other, because this is something the men know how they could support each other, but mostly at the end we don't support each other. This is what I see when women hiring women. We do it, we will bring it, and we bring events like this, and I think it's the best we can do. But at the end, we should also get an internal way how we could support each other, because at the end, mostly I see we don't do this really.
Yeah, okay. I think, can you hear me?
I just want to go back to the question that you asked. So how can we include men more in this undertaking? And I feel we maybe should think about changing men. I feel like there's a lot of women out there also who do think that there's actually no problem, or that there's nothing that we need to do. So I feel like we need to think about a different set of stakeholders, not just that, just one group of stakeholders that should be involved more. And then the question is how we can involve them more. I think it's about making it their problem as well, or making them realize that it's actually concerning everybody. Because it's not just about women getting a higher salary or being recognized. It's maybe also, why doesn't a man get off when the baby is born? It's about a lot of different subjects, and it's actually, I think it's handing it over to everyone that we can fight for this together. It's not a fight that has to
be completed by women alone, but by everybody.
Thank you. We had planned a lot of more questions, but sadly we have to finish. I think today has been super insightful for me also. So I wanted to thank you for coming, and thank you for coming. And I think one action that we all can take away from today is that we, each one of us, should endorse a talented woman during this week in order to do something ourselves. Our last thing will be the feedback slide. We would really like to get the feedback, and we would, after you have given our feedback, we would really love for you to join us at the terrace up there for a row. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for you, and hope to see you at our next event.
Thank you.